Right, so good morning, everybody, and yeah, welcome to this session we're having this morning. It's an informal session talking about core web vitals. Now, I've been to quite a few sort of online webinars that we all are at the moment, and it seems to be sort of a topic that's getting asked about, and considering it's actually coming into play in the Google search engines in May, I'm surprised that it hasn't been talked about more. But it's going to be an interesting session. My name's Joe Bailey. I'm the Managing Director of Generate UK. We're a full service digital agency based in West Berkshire, Newbury. We're also joined by
Jack Turner. Well, I take the lead there. I'm Marketing Operations Specialist for Generate UK.
And I'm Alex Cox. I'm an account manager at Generate UK.
So, guys, let's sort of start off by sort of asking, what is Core Web Vitals? Who wants to take the first one?
Oh, go for it. So Core Web Vitals are a new set of ranking signals that Google will be using, as Joe said, in May, to basically judge website performance. So it's known as the user experience ranking signal because it focuses on three core facets of the user experience, which is loading times, interactivity, and visual stability. So what that means is how quickly it takes the page to load, how quickly it takes for the page to become interactive. So that's the time before clicking the link to getting to the page, and also how visually stable the page you're viewing is. So it's not shifting around, there's no pop-ups coming onto the page. It's just a very static experience for the user.
So is it all about user experience then, Jack, or what?
Yeah, that's what Google say.
Okay.
However, I think the pessimist in me would say that actually it is the Google experience that this update is for. If you were to think about how Google crawls websites and the sheer amount of sites they crawl on a daily basis, then you would imagine that actually the faster it takes for the page to load for them, the less disruption within the crawling experience, and also the amount of time it takes them to get through the content would save them quite a lot of money, potentially millions of dollars on a daily basis in server times. So actually it is being potentially portrayed as a user experience update, but actually it's more of a cost-saving measure for Google.
Oh, controversial, maybe. But interesting. But yeah, if you look at it from that perspective, I think you've got a really, really good point. So obviously I've been doing this for a few years now, since setting up Generate, and we set ourselves up as an SEO and development company originally, and we've seen many a change in Google, from Panda to Penguin to Hummingbird to Fred, that you name them, they come up with the names, and obviously they're always trying to improve the search and how people are finding content. And obviously the big one recently was Mobilegeddon, all about making your site as user friendly and mobile as possible. Is this as big?
I'd personally say, I'll take this one on, that it will have, or it's planning to be, quite a significant impact from what we can see. I think, Jack, you've already identified that they gave us plenty of warning for Core Web Vitals, which would suggest that this new shift will have could have quite a significant impact. They have given us sort of the three Core Web Vitals that we're looking at, and Jack, you summarised them beforehand, but the three sort of main Core Web Vitals are largest contentful paint, first input delay, and cumulative layout shift. I appreciate why that probably doesn't mean a lot to many of you at the minute, but essentially largest contentful paint looks at loading performance, the first input delay measures interactivity, and the cumulative layout shift measures visual stability. And I think that Google have mentioned that it's not good enough to have good performance in 2 out of the 3. You really need to have hit all three targets.
Okay, because I was going to ask that, whether or not it's, if say, a business owner looks at it and there's they've got a website and it loads really slowly, but actually it looks really good and people really like it when they get on there. But if they just sorted the loading time, would they have to address the others?
It's always a balance, because if you are a business owner, a marketing manager, and you are looking to provide a really strong visual experience that maybe hampers the on-page user experience slightly, then actually you could say, well, the site is doing exactly what I want it to. So it becomes, I guess, a compromise between how you want to have your business perceived when the user lands on the page, if that is like half a millisecond slower than average, compared to your ranking ability. So Google have mentioned that a bit like with mobile page speeds and Mobilegeddon itself, that sites that are actually hitting their targets aren't particularly going to see a boost in their rankings, but whereas those who aren't doing those things will see a drop in their rankings. So actually it's not so much a case that you will see massive benefits right away from doing these changes, but it keeps you going on the right path. And actually, if you think about it in a race, if your competitors are stopping running, then you're going to go a lot further regardless of your speed. So I would advise to business owners to actually try and update where you can, but don't be too driven to sort of hit exact perfect targets, because it's a compromise at the end of the day.
So that's the next thought in my head was, how do you measure this and that you've done it correctly? Because I guess there'd be a lot of, again, business owners, web owners out there that are, how do you actually measure the success of what you've implemented? So, you're paying an agency, good money to do it, and then they say, yeah, it's been done. How do you actually measure it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways that you can look to measure the core web vitals. I think one we use quite commonly here is page speed insights. So this essentially just analyzes the content of your web pages and then generates suggestions based on your website performance of how you can then make your website faster. And this can be in the form of image compressions. Trying to think of a few other examples. Let's say reduce file sizes, reducing certain load times, breaking JavaScript, etc. So there are a number of tools that we can use to actually measure the core web vitals key stats.
So if a website is loaded with lots of Java, it's probably they need to address some of those, some of the coding that is being implemented, or.
Yeah, it's a bit like having a conversation with someone and they use 30 words instead of 2. So Google just wants you to get to the point particularly. So if you can break up how your sort of JavaScript and CSS is being loaded and how it's being given to Google, that is really going to help things. So one of the sort of the core fundamentals of how you can improve your page speeds comes down to lazy loading and sort of deferring off-screen sort of content. So rather than just delivering all of the content at once to a user or to Google, the best sort of practice for nowadays is to use lazy loading. So essentially leaving all the content which isn't visible on the screen from loading. So you can have that basically be just the top banner potentially, or it could be as you scroll down, the images load as they come. So you're not spending a lot of time loading unnecessary resources to that user experience.
Interesting. So we've got 3 core areas that we need to look at. Can you talk a little bit about we're talking about loading. Can we talk a little bit about, you said first input delay?
Yeah. So first input delay is essentially the delay, as it says, between that sort of click on the URL to getting sort of any response sort of with the website. Yeah. So that is measured in milliseconds. So a need improvement speed will be basically between 100 to 300 milliseconds. Anything under 100 milliseconds is considered good in Google's eyes. So you basically just need to ensure that your servers are very quick and that basically your content can get delivered to the user very rapidly.
Okay. So so again, it's looking at interactivity, how quickly a user can interact with that page.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I guess it's for I run a digital agency, and a lot of people think I must know everything. Well, believe me, I don't. I'm learning as everybody else is. So it's really interesting because there's lots of 3-letter sort of acronyms, and some of this stuff, is quite easily goes over your head but then it's trying to break it down into layman's, and also just to understand the impact and where it potentially could have. So the culminated layout shift is more to do with the visual page content.
Yeah, so it will be, I guess a good example is when you go on the Daily Mail, and so you've loaded the content, you've got all the headlines, the images, and all of a sudden it all goes all over the place because ads have come in. So that would be a really bad cumulative layout shift.
It's really annoying when that happens.
Really annoying. So in one case, that would be more of a user experience issue. So the core sort of advice moving forward now is to use static websites, which is going to be very difficult for content publishers who are using advertising. It will mean that basically you have to change the way your site is coded to make it explicitly clear within the site framework that this is an ad space, these are the image dimensions, things like that, to really make it clear.
What about when you're sort of scrolling down the page and you've got a bit of parallax scrolling and things start coming in and flying in as you come down, and you get numbers that go up, and they were the trends obviously a few years back. How is that going to be impacted from this, do you think?
Potentially. It's difficult to say, because usually when Google is making these sort of adjustments, they're doing it from the content that it finds on screen. So I guess if they were to parallax in and they were holding steady, that is fine. But if you were to find that they were coming in, but then they were being shifted around with new images loading in, that would be more of an issue with a cumulative layout shift.
Okay.
So it's more about, I guess, the image and the assets themselves rather than sort of like the main content of the site.
Okay. So it's going to be quite an interesting few months, I guess, because when does this exactly come into May? Have we got a specific day in May when it all sort of suddenly springs to life?
Not off the top of my head.
No. But again, I don't think probably business owners, web owners need to worry. Like, they need to address it. The sooner they address it, because if their competitor isn't, they're going to get obviously some advantage on their competitor, because you're not necessarily going to see a hike in search results, but you potentially could if your competitors drop. So I guess it's one of these things that it needs to be addressed. It's not like come May the 31st, if you haven't done it, like you're going to fall off a cliff. It's more of a case that it needs to be addressed over the next few months, really. As every website does, I guess. Every website has to evolve and new tech comes into play, and obviously, Google change the goalposts on a reasonably regular basis, and it's just trying to keep yourself up to speed on that.
Yeah, I think what's important to remember is, around 90% of clicks, organic clicks at least, are on the first page. So if you aren't up to scratch with the core web vitals and you find yourself slipping down the rankings onto page 2, that's a huge amount of potential traffic that you're just missing out on. It's just freely going to your competitors. So it's really important that I think businesses start to wake up to the fact that this is coming, and they need to sort it out ASAP, really.
Yeah.
Well, you've heard it here first, people. Sort it out ASAP. But I think, it will make a big change. I'm quite surprised that there hasn't, like, whilst there has been, we live and breathe digital every day, and we hear about it, but there's not a massive amount of publicity around it, is there?
No, there's not. It's surprising because I think if you go back to sort of 2015 and the launch of Mobilegeddon, as it was affectionately called by SEOs, the transition to mobile-friendly sites was basically hyped up to hysteric levels of your website could be gone from the internet if you're not mobile-friendly. And I think in hindsight, we can definitely see that the precedence for those mobile-friendly websites has led to the higher rankings, or at least stable rankings. But you would still find non-friendly websites on the internet. So that got a lot more coverage, a lot more consideration with marketers, not only digital marketers, but traditional marketers as well.
Do you think it is because they could relate to it? There's a desktop, there's a mobile. It's sort of, it's sort of obvious if it loads well in here, you've got to have a good experience here. Where Core Web Vitals are sort of, I don't know, maybe they're just not, because it's not as visible, or it's all sort of within the site that people aren't really thinking about it as much.
I guess it's a lot of the changes you make are sort of behind the scenes. So I think it's one of those sort of changes that unless you sort of go looking for it and go searching for it, you wouldn't really have heard of it. Because I think a lot of content is now being publicized around the subject because people are starting to wake up to how important it is. But yeah, it's as you said, sort of from sort of your normal business owner or somebody working in business, it's more of a sort of behind the scenes techie change as opposed to looking at a website on mobile versus the desktop.
Yeah, and I think some of the responsibility needs to be given to the agencies that companies work with, because a lot of, I guess, smaller business owners will be working with agencies as a marketing partner to provide these sort of recommendations. So if the agency isn't informing their clients, then potentially this is going to get missed by a lot of internal marketers. If you have an in-house development team, I think it's definitely worth speaking to them now. There's still time to adjust changes, but also talk to your marketing agencies to see what their advice would be specifically for your website. Because I think, as Joe mentioned and Alex mentioned, things such as the mobile change is a visual element. If I said to you, Joe, we need a mobile website, it's a tangible thing that we can look at. But if I said to you, for a business case, that we need to stop the layout shift of our site, it's a lot more difficult to grasp the business impact of that. So I think some of the responsibility does need to be given to agencies to provide these recommendations and expertise.
Okay. So to summarise then, I guess, if we summarise, so Core Web Vitals are a new set of rules, effectively, that are coming out in May from Google. The first is largest contentful paint, LCP, which effectively it measures the time it takes for the main piece of content to load. The second is FID, or which first input delay, which is the time it takes for a page to become interactive. And finally, CLS, culminated layout shift, which is the amount of unexpected layout shift in the page, in the visual page when the page loads. So it doesn't sort of come in and out, and it's there, and you can sort of, I guess, interact with it pretty soon. So is that a fair summary of the three Core Web Vitals?
Yeah, I think it's a fair summary. I think just with this, I think it's sort of forcing a lot of people into this new era of user experience, which in the long run will obviously benefit them, because when you're browsing, that's exactly what you want, is a clear, consistent, quick browsing experience through a website. And I think through a lot of the work we've been doing with clients and even through our free audits that we've been offering, we found that a lot of websites are sort of currently lacking in the three areas. So I think it's sort of highlighting to us, at least, how important these next few months will be.
So we offer a free website audit, I hear you saying.
We do indeed, yes, we do indeed.
Excellent. So anybody that's watching this or has come across it, obviously get in contact with Alex or Jack. We'll post their details and get in touch, and we can give you a website audit. But on a serious note, you need to be talking to your marketing agencies or your web developers about this, because it is going to happen. It's coming up quite quick, and if you don't, your competitors will, and ultimately we're gonna get one up on you. So keep a lookout, read a bit more, and hopefully this has been useful. And thanks to Alex and thanks to Jack for your time this morning, and we'll look forward to the next conversation about the next update in a few months' time, probably.